Bonjour les amis. Bonjour, bonjour. Welcome to the Loire Valley. Look at this view. Look at this view. It's winter, it's cold. It's actually 4 Celsius right now, which is barely 40 Fahrenheit. It's humid and it's a little windy, and to be honest with you, I have been freezing my derriere for the last 2 hours walking around this town and scouting for this tour. So you'll have to forgive me if sometimes I freeze, because I feel like a little popsicle. Bonjour les amis, I see you pop up. Okay, so I'm starting this tour in earnest because I need to stay warm. And we have a great view here of the Loire River. We are standing on the left bank of the Loire River. We are in a small town between Tours and Saumur along the Loire. And the name of the town is Langeais, Langeais. This is the Langeais Bridge. And I can only show it to you from this point, which is why I'm starting the tour here. This bridge looks a little medieval, doesn't it? Well, the story is that it's not that old. It was added in the 19th century, but like many bridges in this area, it seems, it's gone through a lot of trouble, this poor bridge. And it's been fixed and repaired several times, blown up too, when the Prussians rolled in 1870, 71, and then 1940, the Germans. But anyway, in 1930, when they fixed it up, they decided to make it a little bit more medieval. Do you see how it has towers there? I can't really zoom on Facebook Live, so I'm not going to attempt that. But these towers were because this bridge faces a well-known chateau in the Loire Valley. And the reason I have chosen this chateau today and this town is because even if the Château de Langeais is well known and I think welcomes over 100,000 visitors each year, most of these visitors, about 80%, are French. So because a lot of my followers are not French, many in fact are Americans, Australians, I know that many among you have not been here before, which is why I picked this site. In La Provence, outside Paris, just like in Paris, I like to stay off the beaten path. And so this is why we are here today, friends. So hopefully this will give you an idea of a great day trip if or when you visit the Loire Valley. Right now, I am on the grounds of the chateau. What remains of the grounds of the chateau, I should say. So we're going to take a stroll, and you will see life is very quiet in Langeais today. This morning we had the Sunday market. Things were good. But this afternoon, it's life en Provence, outside Paris. Everything is closed, and it's also winter. A lot of businesses are closed, taking their annual vacation, and it's Sunday, and they're enjoying being home. Bonjour, madame. They're enjoying being home because it's super cold outside and only dummies like your friend Véro are out live streaming. So enjoy with a warm drink, coffee or whatever strikes your fancy while I am freezing my derriere out here, and I hope you enjoy this tour. This is an incredible tree house. This tree house is built inside a giant cedar, an Atlas cedar, and it is for kids because in this area the children can play when they visit the chateau with their parents. I actually went all the way up there and meant to start the tour there, but then I really wanted to show you the bridge we saw earlier. So I had to make an executive decision, which is why we started over the bridge. If you come here, make sure to go up this really fancy tree house. It's a lot of fun. See, we have grown-ups having fun up there. You are literally in the middle of this cedar tree. Great views of the area. It's really fun. Oh, thank you, Cindy. I just had coffee. Actually, I went to hide for an hour in a nice one of 2 places that were open in town this afternoon, and I was able to warm up. So right here, we're going to talk about history today. We have to, because we are in the Loire Valley, but also going to tie it up to the present as we always do. This is the site of an old chapel that dates back to the 11th century. That's all that's left of that chapel that was on the chateau grounds. You can see the ruins, really. It was destroyed in the 18th century. A lot of the chateaux seem to have been damaged in the 18th century, before the French Revolution, in fact. This chateau has had a very interesting history. This is what the chapel looked like way back when, in the 11th century. So we are still walking the grounds. I am not going to take you inside the chateau. You can visit 15 rooms in the chateau, and I went through each and every one of them today. Each has a huge fireplace, but the fireplaces were not on, obviously. And I can honestly tell you, I don't think I've been this cold in my life. Inside the Chateau of Langeais in recent memory, especially when I stepped at the top of the chateau on the wall walk where the guards used to patrol and could feel the wind through the windows there. It was incredibly cold. So it's better now. It's better here, actually. So before, all of you who are watching those shows on YouTube where you see these people who get great deals on chateaus and then spend the rest of their lives maintaining them and figuring out how to raise money to maintain them, come and spend some time inside. Bonjour. Bonjour, bonjour. Come and spend some time inside the Château de Langeais on a cold January afternoon, and then make your decision, because somebody needs to heat up those rooms. And if you're not going to do it with the fireplaces, it is cold and damp in there. And I really, really feel for the people who preceded us here and lived here through the centuries, through the Middle Ages. Somebody says there's a problem with the sound, so I hope it's fine. I checked the cell signal earlier. I hope it's fine now. Let me know if there's an issue. I'm going to keep walking, so if there's a problem, it should get solved quickly. And as always, I won't quit. If there is a cell signal issue, I'll keep filming, so don't drop off, just come back and we'll keep filming. All right, friends, this is impressive right here. We are in front of what is essentially the oldest dungeon in France, the oldest dungeon of a chateau that was built here in the 10th century. We are in the back of what was that dungeon. There was a floor where they lived and entertained in the dungeon. There was also below ground a place where they stored a lot of things. But this is all that's left of the original medieval chateau that was built in the 10th century here at the Château de Langeais. What you see here is the recreation of scaffoldings at that time. This is how scaffoldings were built in the Middle Ages, so they could build all these monuments. Thank you for confirming the sound is great. I appreciate that. Thank you. This is a really great turnout for a Sunday, because I know it's early, but the chateau closes at 5. It's now 4 p.m. and I just didn't want to risk it. So if you come here, you'll be able to go up those stairs, step on these, and then stand on what is essentially the oldest dungeon or keep in France. The chateau was one of the first to be built in this part of the world out of stone. Back in the Middle Ages, before the Middle Ages, the chateaus were made of wood. So this is really interesting from an architectural standpoint and historical standpoint as well, of course. You know how we talk about the Loire Valley? It's one of the most visited regions in France, not necessarily by foreigners, but by a lot of French people. Why is it that the Loire Valley is so interested? Why is it so interesting? Well, because of the chateaus, you'll say. There are over 1,000 of them, they say, large and small, public and private. You have the star chateaus like Chenonceau and Chambord and Villandry and more. And then you have other chateaus like this one. But why is it? Well, the Loire Valley matters in French history because for about 100 years, from the early 15th century to the early 16th century, the kings of France ruled from this area. They moved around quite a bit, as you know. That's why in a lot of the chateaus you see trunks, massive trunks, to carry their things. Some of them preferred Amboise. Some of them preferred Blois. The King of France, known as Louis XI, chose the outskirts of Tours and had himself had a chateau built for himself, Plessis-les-Tours. So these kings ruled from this area until, in the early 16th century, one of them, the mighty Francis I, bonjour, François Ier, Francis I, decided that French monarchy would go to Paris. And he started working on some of the chateaux in the Ile-de-France. You know Fontainebleau, you know Saint-Germain-en-Laye. And that was pretty much the end of the prominent time, of this important time in the history of the Loire Valley, because the kings left. So here's a magnificent view of the Château de Langeais. Behind me is the dungeon of the original chateau, built by a powerful regional lord. We call him the Duke of Anjou. Anjou is a province that's nearby, near Saumur and Langeais. And then you had the Dukes of Blois, or the Counts of Blois. Sorry, I think they were counts. So Counts of Blois, they would fight with each other, fighting for this very strategic place. And eventually, the old chateau, the one we just saw, was destroyed. And in the 15th century, Louis XI, the king who enjoyed living on the outskirts of Tours, commissioned this chateau, a new chateau. And that's the one you're looking at. It is the Château de Langeais. There are just a few visitors. One of the perks of coming in this season, you freeze your derrière, but there's hardly anyone around, and the staff is very laid back. You can ask all sorts of questions. It's wonderful. So really, there were three sections in this chateau. On the left here, you have where the guards would be, on the left. The central logis, or building, would have been the housing, the accommodations for the people who stayed here or lived here for a while. And on the right-hand side, the reception rooms where they entertained. The 15 rooms you can visit in the chateau today are pretty much in the central section. But you can also walk around, like I said, do the wall walk. Le chemin de ronde in French. And oh, look, the gardens are here. I got distracted, sorry. Sometimes I get distracted myself, just looking at things. So clearly we need to come back in the spring or summer to see these beautiful beds when they're blooming, but you can see that this garden must be very elegant. And there are a lot of herbs, I can tell. I see rosemary, I see lavender. And what a great view from here of the only wall left from that original chateau from the 10th century, built by the Count of Anjou. The dungeon. So the visit is well worth it. You'll pay 10 euros. And for 10 euros, you get to visit the 15 rooms and the grounds like I did today. And get this, when you pay the entrance fee at one of these chateaus, so this is the ticket, right? 10 euros, I think it says that on the, 10 euros. You get discounts, you keep your ticket, and then you get discounts at other chateaux like Azay-le-Rideau, or if you go to the Abbaye de Fontevraud, the well-known abbey that's not that far from here. So save those tickets. Go to the website of the Château de Langeais, and they will explain to you what kind of discounts you're getting. I want to show you this church dedicated to Saint John the Baptist. We are not going to get very close to it today, and I want you to take a peek at it because this church is the main church in the village. There was mass going on this morning. I don't know if you saw the short video I shared on Instagram where you could hear people singing inside. This church originally was created by a very important man in the terrain named Martin of Tours, who of course became Saint Martin. I have told you about Martin many times during the live strolls we took around Tours, and if you want to see those, you need to go to the France with Véro YouTube channel, as you know. But this church was rebuilt, of course. This is not the original. I mean, Martin lived in the 4th century, friends. So 4th century, but you can see the clock tower, which is from the 11th or 12th century, I forget, but the Romanesque architecture definitely, and it was they worked on it pretty heavily too in the 19th century, so the transept was added then, and you can see the transept from here. So a lovely church that you can see in town. Langeais is a small town, 4,000 people live here or so. Very quiet in the winter months. As you can guess, much busier during the season. I'm not sure what the big rounds are in the courtyard. If there was a catapult, I would have said maybe they're rocks they used to toss at assailants, but I don't really know. And nobody's around to ask. So let's take a good peek at this chateau, which is typical of the 15th century, just at the cusp of the Renaissance, the early 16th century. I mean, you can see the signs of the Renaissance on this facade. This is not a medieval fortress. Not anymore, not on this side, though you might be surprised by the front walls later. Now, an important event happened here, very important for the history of France. A wedding took place here in December of 1491. It was a secret wedding, so it happened super early in the morning, and there were very few guests. It was the wedding of a woman, a queen, we have talked about before. Her name was Anne of Brittany. Remember when we went to Nantes in July of 2020, or when we went to Brittany together? We talked about the powerful Duchy of Brittany. And the Duchess of Brittany was Anne de Bretagne, the only woman who became Queen of France twice. Her first marriage with a French king happened here. You can see Anne on the right. She was quite pretty. And on the left, Charles VIII, who became her first French husband. She was 14, he was 21. They were married for about 7 years until he died accidentally in the Chateau of Amboise, where they lived part of the time. I've told you stories about Anne de Bretagne. She's quite a fascinating person. When they sealed the deal in this chateau here on their wedding day, it was very important for France because this meant that the powerful Duchy of Brittany was finally attached to France. And you can imagine the importance of that. She also committed, if something should happen to her husband and there were no male heirs, to marry his successor. And even though she had many pregnancies, none of her children really survived from that first marriage. And so she eventually had to marry a second time his cousin, who was Louis XII. So she had 2 husbands, was Queen of France twice. Only 2 of her children survived before she died. One was a daughter named Claude, who married one of the most famous kings in the Loire Valley and in France, who was Francis I, Claude. Very interesting story, Anne of Brittany, if you get a chance to read up about her. So this is what the Château de Langeais is known for primarily. It's the wedding of Anne of Brittany. I was going to say the secret wedding. They didn't want all Europeans to know about it because imagine what a powerful alliance that was going to be. And they just announced it once it was done, roughly. So the entrance is here, La Billetterie, you see, Billetterie, which is where you buy your tickets, and the boutique. They always have you go through a boutique. And look at this is quite massive, huh? Beautiful architecture here. And this is where you leave the chateau. I think I'll give you one last peek at the wall of the old dungeon from the 10th century. Look at that. Thank you for being here today on a Sunday. I know it's early for many of you. I waited as long as I could to start, but the chateau, like I said, closes at 5, so I couldn't start much later. Remember, you can come here, visit the chateau, visit the grounds. If you have kids, even better, because the grounds are a lot of fun. I personally love this little pink door, don't you? I call it the pink door. I'm waiting for this group to go through because there is something quite exceptional in this chateau that was rebuilt in the 19th century. That was here at the beginning. It is a drawbridge. And that drawbridge is manually operated twice a day when they open the chateau and when they close it. So you kind of come into the chateau the way they did. And I don't know when the last time was that you went through on a drawbridge into a chateau, but there you are doing it now. You are on a drawbridge, friends. Manually operated twice a day. The good thing about this chateau is that it is right in the heart of town, and the train station is about 5 minutes away. So if you are staying in Tours, it's a 20-minute train ride away. Super convenient. This street was very busy this morning, or quite busy, with the market that was happening down there, and we will go down it because I want to show you a square that's down there. But here we are standing outside the chateau. I have a couple things to show you before we leave the chateau, which I thought you would enjoy. And keep in mind, this is how people live in small towns everywhere in France, especially in the winter, especially on a Sunday afternoon, or on a Monday for that matter. It is very quiet. So for those of you relocating to France, keep that in mind. The winter months are very slow. All right, let me show you something about the chateau. Boy, so this pâtissier, they have quite a few, for such a small town, they have quite a few pâtissiers and boulangers. This is France after all. This one just closed. It was open this afternoon. So remember what we just saw in the back. Very hard to see the chateau. We're so close to it. Remember how the back of the chateau was very elegant, almost like a Renaissance chateau, but not quite. But look at the front. The front looks like a medieval fortress still, which is why I think it's so interesting. Look at that. I mean, of course, barring the scaffoldings, it's winter time. We're doing all our renovation work, right? So look, this is a medieval fortress. You literally enter it with the drawbridge. So King Louis XI had it built more as a power statement because it's strategically located on the Loire, and it's one of the last towns before Tours, and he lived in Tours. So it was kind of a way of telling his potential enemies, hey, you know, here we are, we can see you from up here. I'll tell you a little bit more about the town. It's pristine. It's a very nice little town, really nice. People are super friendly. All right, I'm just going to step aside for a second here. Hope you can pick up the wind. It's really windy. Just to show you an architectural feature of the chateau, what it's famous for. Let's see if I come here, will you see it? I think you will. Look at the dungeon we just saw inside over there. All right, so I think you'll see it here. I'm standing below one of the towers here, and you can see the wall walk where the guards would patrol. That's covered with those windows. And this is what the chateau's famous for too. Those openings under it called the machicoulis. Those were holes where they would dump rocks or melting liquids, oil, whatever, at assailants to protect themselves. So this is really a feature of medieval chateaus, part of their defense, really. And I thought you'd enjoy saying that because you can really see it on this side. A couple of small rivers, I should say not even rivers, brooks, streams cross the town, and there are tributaries of the Loire. And you hear one of them now. I'm going to show it to you. The square Place Jacques Siegfried is named after the gentleman. I think the chateau owes everything to him, really. Mr. Jacques Siegfried lived in the Alsace in the 19th century. He was a very successful industrialist. He came here while visiting the Loire Valley, fell in love with the chateau, and spent the following 20 years and his considerable fortune restoring the chateau. He's the one who fixed the drawbridge. He's the one who accumulated an incredible collection of medieval furniture as well as tapestries. I wish you could see the tapestries inside this chateau, some of the nicest I've seen. So a tribute to Mr. Siegfried. Before he died, he donated the chateau to the French state. The chateau today has belonged since the start of the 20th century to the Institut de France. You may remember the Institut de France as this place you see from the Pont des Arts in Paris. That round dome. It's made of 5 5 académies, like the Académie Française. All right, so let's just take a peek here at this lovely little stream. Boy, that water must be so cold. So that's another feature I like in Langeais, is that it feels like you're walking. There are quite a few bridges as you go in that direction. Some of them are private and lead to houses. But look at this. Isn't this lovely? Ah, you're welcome. It's not very interesting if you don't provide context and link the past to the present, I think. Easier to remember the story of a place if you understand what happened there and why it's important. All right, something that's really funny, I think. Look how pristine this is. There was a long line outside this boulangerie this morning. The church is over there. I love this sign. Ici, le 17 avril 1891, il ne se passa strictement rien. We can see somebody has a great sense of humor. Here on April 17th, 1891, exactly nothing happened. Now, the truth is, if you want a history lesson in French history and in French kings in particular, come to Langeais, because each street is named after one of the kings I mentioned earlier. And again, this is the church dedicated to Saint Jean-Baptiste, originally created by Martin, who became Saint-Martin later on. It's a pretty church, so you just follow that street and you get there. So let's explore the town for a little bit, and then I'll wrap up and head back to Tours. Pour myself a nice glass of wine to wrap up Sunday, to wrap up this weekend. Hope you're enjoying this stroll. Bonjour! People are quite curious about my device here. I noticed that at the market this morning too. All right, so quiet, quiet, quiet. I warned you. I have one more thing to show you on this side, and then I will take you down the main street here. La rue Gambetta, named after politician Léon Gambetta. It's like Général de Gaulle or Victor Hugo. You have streams. You have streets and squares named after them all over France. This is a bed and breakfast. Chambre d'hôte, bed and breakfast, and it's also a boutique. I looked at the rates. The rooms are around 90, 100 a night. That's the starting price. I saw some comments about the sound. It seems to be back on now. Yeah, that's the problem with those old stones. Sometimes you do get some connection issues. Very often it works fine in the replay, so it works out that way. All right, I want to show you something. This crêperie on the corner, which of course is closed. La Blanche Hermine. Remember when we were in Azay le Rideau on Friday for that little impromptu appearance? I mentioned Anne of Brittany and her daughter Claude, who married Francis I, and I told you their emblem animal was the ermine. I think it's also a stoat in English. You can see it up here, that white animal. And so this crêperie is clearly a tribute to Anne of Brittany and her. I love that sign, actually. It's very pretty. And you have the tools to make crepes on the sign right below the animal. Do you see it? Bonjour and welcome if you just joined us. So very peaceful town on a Sunday afternoon, and the street here is named Anne de Bretagne. Like I said, you walk around Langeais and you get your French history lesson if you look up each and every one of the kings mentioned here. All right, enough about this side. We could keep going. I want to show you one of the oldest homes in town. It's rumored to have been built at the same time as the Chateau, the newer Chateau in the 15th century, and there it is. La Maison des Trois Rois, the home of the three kings. So a nice example of a half-timbered home with colors, and a nice sign too. The three crowns for the three kings. Now this morning, when I was looking for the house, I stopped a gentleman who was loading his car. He was very friendly, and I asked where the house was, so he took me here. Very happy to help. And he also mentioned that there was another one just like it right here against this wall, and that he thinks it was about 20 years ago it collapsed and they took it down, or something along those lines. But there used to be two of them. Yeah, a rainbow bench, colorful bench. You're right. But mostly the architecture in Langeais is very pretty. I mean, immaculate, pristine streets. A lot of the homes, the facades are made of tufa stone, but they come in different styles, and it's a very pretty town. It really is. And you know, though I'm freezing, I'm kind of happy to do it today on a quiet day, because I can't imagine live streaming like this in the middle of a crowd in July. Like I said, this is a place that's very popular with French tourists, and it's got to be packed in the summer. It's not a very big town. You see the church Jean-Baptiste, Saint Jean-Baptiste, in the distance there. And literally you're walking by the chateau, right? This is the drawbridge we just stepped out of. If you missed the start of the live stream, you can watch the replay later. I'm watching the time while I'm talking. I know you're all busy. La Maison des Vins. So I was hoping to take you in there, and then they closed right after the market, so I couldn't. Well, in case you don't know, we are in the Loire Valley. We have excellent wines here. Nearby are the vineyards of Bourgueil and Saint-Nicolas de Bourgueil. So a lot of the wines you'll see here, this is a place where you can buy and sample the vin de Bourgueil. The main varietal for Bourgueil, the red, is Cabernet Franc. We don't pronounce the C. Cabernet Franc. Oh, coucou! We also have whites and sparkling wines. We call them Crémant de Loire. They're quite delicious. And rosé. So if you come here, this is a good place to sample wine. It's called, without getting run over, if I may, there we go, La Maison des Vins, right at the foot of the Chateau. And this boutique is run by a lovely lady. I got some cookies there earlier for apéro, so savory cookies. Art et Touraine Gourmande, and she has local specialties from all over the Touraine that you can eat, that you can drink, and she knows her products very well. She knows the producers. She can tell you about each and every one of them. She also sells wine, as you can tell. Montlouis-sur-Loire, other popular wines along the Loire. So don't hesitate to visit these guys. I wish they were open and we could step in, but c'est dimanche. It is Sunday. So this morning people were walking up and down, catching up with each other, because the market was right there, starting on this street and to the right. And it was pretty good size considering the season. This is a good restaurant, almost a semi-gastronomic place. I've read reviews of this restaurant in several places. Really, really nice food. Au coin des Halles, by the Halles. And the reason is we have La Halle here, the covered market. So this morning, all of this was filled with merchants. Not as many as in the summer, probably, but under the Halle, over there, the covered food market, you had quite a few booth stands. So I filmed a short video, and I haven't decided yet if I'm going to share it with just club members, patrons, or everyone else. I'll see. This place is great. This is La Pause Gourmande. Right now, friends, it's the only place where you can stay warm, drink or eat in town. And they saved me earlier after I visited the Chateau because I had turned into a popsicle. Those two ladies are super friendly. They make crepes and gaufres and snacks at lunchtime. La pause gourmande, a pause for those with a sweet tooth. More boulangerie. There are several in town. This is one of them. Your little cafe. Okay, so I want to finish on the square that's over there because I must say that if I was teaching a workshop like I did in Seattle on French life, that square they have in town here is the perfect square. I hope the connection is going to stay okay here. I'm going to go fast to this place. I'm going to show you what I mean. You know how a lot of French towns have streets or squares or gardens, parks named after the same people, and how you tend to find the same things all over France. Well, this square here, named after le 14 juillet, July 14th, the French national holiday, has everything. Here's the bridge we saw at the beginning of the tour from our Belvedere on the grounds of the Chateau. Look at it now. We can see it pretty well here. Look at that. You see how they turned it into a medieval bridge in the 1930s? You see the Chateau peaking and the church. So I was in love with the square when I saw it earlier. It was packed with cars for the market. And I started strolling around, and all of a sudden I realized it's like, oh my gosh, it's like a postcard of La Belle France. First, you have your mairie, you know, your city hall. Sometimes it's called Hôtel de Ville if it's bigger. But you have your mairie with the French flag, no European flag, interestingly. And you have the French motto on top, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. And the crest, the coat of armor on the top. I noticed too there was an interesting sign. You may have a hard time reading it, so I'll read it for you. There is it's a thank you sign, in fact. Les déportés et évadés alliés en reconnaissance aux habitants pour leur hospitalité si courageuse. In 1944, we were in occupied France here, in this part of the Touraine. And in 1944, after D-Day, in August of 1944, I forgot if it was August or September. I think it was August, but anyway, the Germans kept piling prisoners on trains, trying to take them back to Germany still, putting one last stand, you know. And a train came from Rennes in Brittany with about 150 people on board. A lot of them were all prisoners. Some of them were members of the French Resistance. Some of them were members of foreign troops they had captured as well. And so, as the train arrived here, Allied planes bombed the train, thinking they were Germans. So some people died on the train, but in the commotion that followed, over 150 people on board that train were able to run away, to escape from the train, and then they were helped by the local population. So this is why this plaque is here. And if you want to see a memorial to this event, there is the car from the train is saved right outside the train station. So if you come here by train, make sure to see that tribute to this event. Bonjour, welcome if you just joined us. We're going to be wrapping up on this little square, so you can go back to the replay later. So I said this is the perfect French square. We have the mairie, right? We have the police municipale. In the back there is la bibliothèque, the library. What else do we have on this side? I see a notaire office, very important man in French life, the notaire, especially if you're buying properties, working on your will. Look at the pretty facades. You have your gazebo, always a gazebo where local bands can play and people used to gather. There's a school, Groupe Scolaire Henri Pellet. There's the post office over there. I'm telling you, all of the attributes of French life are basically around this square in Langeais. It's perfect. I could teach a class right here in the middle of this square on French life. I love it. And of course, you have your monument aux morts, your memorial to those who gave their lives. RF for République Française, French Republic, with the tricolore, the French flag. And they are honoring here those who suffered, who were members of the French Resistance between 1940 and 1945, and those who were deported as well. And below that is one of the most famous documents in French life and in French history. It is the appeal of General de Gaulle in June of 1940, after France surrendered, and he went to London and started broadcasting on the BBC, asking every French man and woman, no matter how old they were, no matter what their profession was, to not surrender and join him in London to organize the resistance. This document you'll see in most French towns and villages posted somewhere. And on the back you have the names of the brave people who fought. Some art deco vibes here. These are the names of the people, and all of these are men, but then there are a couple of women I noticed earlier. The women are down here, Suzanne and Julienne. So you have everything here, really. This square is perfect because you will see similar squares or similar buildings on those squares everywhere in France. Interesting statue here. I'm not sure who the artist here. I think it said Fred. There's a name. It says Fred Chateau. I'm assuming it's the artist. Let's see. I'm going to show it to you. That's right, Elizabeth. Never forget. Interesting. The trees have been trimmed before spring. They do that all over France too. So you're seeing Langeais, very peaceful, very quiet on a Sunday afternoon in the winter. If you come in the spring and summer, it will be a lot busier, especially on Sunday, in fact, because it's market day, good size market. I would say this would make a great day trip if you're staying in a city like Tours or Saumur, which is not really far. It would make a great day trip because by the time you're done visiting the chateau and the grounds, maybe visiting the market on Sunday morning, having lunch, it's a nice leisurely day trip with a very manageable town. They have a lot of chambres d'hôtes, so you can spend the night here, bed and breakfast type deals. They have hotels as well. There's one across from us. And l'Office du Tourisme, the tourist office information is right here in this building. I know there's a theater in town as well as a movie theater. So, 4,000 people live here. Time to say a little hello. Voilà. Bonjour les amis. In fact, I'm going to do this because I need to breathe a little. Phew. I want to say thank you for joining me today in the beautiful Loire Valley. A little bit off the beaten path because I know many of you probably haven't come to Langeais before. Now I know you know my tours are tip operated because I need to cover the cost for running these. So if you're so inclined, you can use my virtual tip jar on PayPal. All that information will pop up later. And if you really want to join the fun and encourage me to do more of these virtual tours everyone enjoys on Facebook Live, then you should probably consider joining the France with Véro Club on Patreon. For a small amount each month, you unlock content I don't share with anyone else. In fact, I'm going to turn around so you can see the chateau. How about this? More interesting than my face, probably. Perfect. Don't move, Chateau. You're in the frame. I won't move either. If you join the club, just next week, the flaneur level is the most popular one in the Patreon program because you have content in English and in French there. Just next week, they will get treated, those club members, to a new video I filmed for them this week at a museum dedicated to Balzac that happens to be in another lovely village, in a beautiful chateau, a smaller chateau. So they will get treated to that. And other events as well throughout the month, where they can interact with me and each other. We have a private Facebook group, lots of fun things. So look me up on Patreon. It would be great. I can always use the help and the support to run this small business of mine. And I will end or wrap up this tour in this quiet street that won't be as quiet if you come back later in the year. The occasional car just went by. There are several boulangers, butchers, everything you need for a picnic if you need it. And of course this magnificent chateau, the church you can visit, the bridge, plenty of hiking areas. We have a regional park nearby, lots of good things. You're right, time for hot chocolate. In fact, I'm going back to La Pause Gourmande to treat myself to a sugar crepe, une crêpe, because I have earned it. And it's the end of my working day, and now I'm going to enjoy the rest of my Sunday. Thank you for joining me today, friends. I will be seeing you soon, and as always, the replay for this tour will be uploaded on YouTube in a couple of days. À bientôt. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.